In this video, I'm going to show how to place the inner tie rods on this Nissan Frontier. These are located behind your front wheels, and you will need an alignment after this job is done. Let's get started. With the vehicle safely raised and supported, use a 21mm socket, remove all 6 lug nuts, and then pull the wheel off. And now remove your wheel. Now with our wheel off, we can see our tie rods right here. We'll start right at the jam nut, which locks the inner and the outer together. We'll have to break this free. Use a 24mm wrench and break that jam nut free. All right, there we go. Now the inner tie rod is spinning with the jam nut. That's okay, as long as these spin individually, we can remove the outer. Now on the knuckle side, we'll see where the outer tie rod is held on with this mounting nut. However, on top of that is a cotter pin, which we have to remove. This one is quite rusted, so I may have to break it off, but I'm going to try to remove it first. Oftentimes they get stuck though. I'm just going to cut mine off and use my impact to get the nut over that. If you had to, you could drill out that old cotter pin after the nut is off. Use a 22mm socket and remove this mounting nut. I am going to reinstall it just a couple threads. What this is going to do is when the tie rod stud breaks free, it's going to stop it from falling down all the way. That's plenty. Now hit this with a hammer and break free that stud. All right, and that came off. So we're going to remove the mounting nut now. Pull this off. Now you want to count the amount of turns it takes to remove this outer tie rod so that when we put it back, it's on the same amount of turns. This will get you close to what the alignment was, but still you need an alignment. 14 turns for me. It will be different for you, but whatever number you have, remember it or write it down. We have to remove the jam nut the rest of the way now. I'm going to use a 24mm socket on my impact and take this off all the way. If you have to hold the inner tie rod, you could use a wrench here or locking pliers. On the end of the boot, you'll see that there's a clamp right here holding it on to the inner tie rod. With some pliers, I'm going to pinch this clamp and remove it. These clamps are reusable. If they're in good shape, you can put it back on at the end, but if it is not in good shape, you can either replace it with another clamp or use a wire tie instead. If you follow the boot inward, you'll see where it attaches to the power steering rack with a metal clamp. To get that off, the easiest way is with a pry bar and a hammer. Set your pry bar right on that clamp and hit it with your hammer. That'll break it off. This is a single time use clamp anyway. Pull that away, and that should have unlocked the boot and allow it to come off of the power steering rack. Now grab onto the boot, twist it, turn it, and pull it. Sometimes it gets stuck on the inner tie rod here. What you can do if that's the case is stick a pocket screwdriver in here, help pry it up and out of the way. And there we go. Now grab your inner tie rod tool, line it up with the inner tie rod. And in my case, this style of tie rod tool, I have to thread in and clamp down. Optionally, you could also use a pipe wrench or some large pliers, or even a 35mm wrench that fits here. Whatever tool works for you, go ahead and use it, but I have this. I have to tighten this up a little bit. This works through pressure. Put a long ratchet on here for leverage and break this free. At this point, I can remove my tool and continue removing the inner tie rod. If you can't do it by hand, you can use some pliers. And there it is. Inspect the power steering rack and the threads. Clean it up if necessary. This one looks like it's in great shape, so let's install the new tie rod. Optionally, on these threads here, you can put a little bit of thread locker. The old one didn't have any, but there was no locking washer on here, which some models do have, so I will put thread locker on the threads. And with that, install the tie rod. We'll clamp this back on so we can make it nice and tight once it's bottomed out. Get your tool back in here, snug it up. That is completely bottomed out right there. I'll give it at most 1/8 of a turn after that. You don't want to twist the entire rack internally, that'll destroy the seals. And you also, of course, don't want to over tighten the threads, but because we put thread locker on there, I'm not concerned, it should stay locked in nice and tight. And now I can remove my tool. Your inner tie rod may have come with a small packet of grease. That grease should be applied to the inner ball and socket joint of the tie rod, and then spin it to work it in. Any excess grease I'm going to put right here where the boot sits. This will allow it to pivot while the alignment's being done and will make things easier. Take the boot, slide it over the tie rod. That's seated right there, and now we'll just stretch it until it goes over the rack. Slip it right over. Make sure it's lined up everywhere. And now we'll use a wire tie to secure this. Double check that that's lined up before you tighten it. That's as tight as I can get it by hand, so I'll take some pliers and twist it. With this twisted, that makes it a little bit extra tight. Once it's tight, cut off the excess. These clamps can be reused if you want to, or use a wire tie instead. On these threads, I'm going to apply some anti-seize. That way the new tie rod doesn't corrode and doesn't get stuck on there. It'll also help the installation as well as the alignment. Take the new jam nut and thread it all the way on. Before installing the outer tie rod, I'm going to do my best to get some anti-seize in these threads right here. This is going to make sure that it doesn't seize up on there in the future. It will be locked in with the jam nut, but I don't want the threads rusting. Take the outer tie rod, thread it back in the same amount of turns it took to remove it. That's it for me. Bring the knuckle over, put the outer tie rod stud up and through, and get the mounting nut on. Snug up this mounting nut. Torque this to 63 foot-pounds. It is normal for this to want to spin as you try to torque it. That's tight. To make sure that you can lock this in, turn the castle nut until one of the slots lines up with the cotter pin hole. If it does not line up, or if it's close, continue tightening and never loosen no matter how close this is. Now you can take your cotter pin, slip it through, and we'll bend it to lock it in. All right, that's locked in. Now with everything resecured, tighten up the jam nut. Use that 24mm wrench you had and make sure that it is actually nice and tight. All right, that's perfect. And I'm just going to straighten this out so the outer tie rod isn't sitting at an angle. Reinstall your wheel. If your vehicle has those center caps, you'd want to put that on now, then the lug nuts. We'll install all 6 of these, bottom them out in a cross pattern, and then also in a cross pattern, we'll torque them to 98 foot-pounds. 98 foot-pounds in a cross pattern, here we go. Double check them all. Now you can do the same on the other side. Take it for a road test and don't forget to get in alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.